Bradley Keene held the notice like it was a verdict. You're in violation. Section 7C prohibits commercial activity on residential lots. I looked past him. Ruby's martial arts mat was still rolled up, tucked neatly against the porch. No students, no signs. Just one grieving kid training alone under the oak swing. Funny, I said, because that mat's in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this entire HOA? I paused, tapping my temple. You're still pinging off my system. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. Bradley blinked, but that smug real estate smirk didn't crack. Ping away, Eli. Your tech toys won't change the rules. He didn't know I helped write the rules that govern residential surveillance limits in 3 states, or that I'd buried quieter, nastier systems in more hostile terrain than this pristine suburb ever dreamed of. But that could wait. I'm Eli Wren. After a decade running counter-intel firewalls for Army cyber ops, I came home to Cedar Trace Estates, the neighborhood where my sister raised her daughter, Ruby. My sister died a year ago. Cancer, fast and mean. She made me promise one thing: keep Ruby safe, let her heal. So, when Ruby started practicing martial arts again, same as her mom taught her, I built her a soft swing from her mother's old oak dining table, hung it from the tree they planted together, and gave her space to breathe. That's when the violation started. First it was unapproved structural additions, then unlicensed training, then a notice about emotional disruption to neighborhood peace. They called a therapy mat a public hazard. But that swing was the last thing Ruby touched before she stopped speaking for 6 months. She's only 14, and the only time she smiles now is when she's training under that tree. It's her boundary line, her church, her mother's voice woven into movement, and they want it gone. Where are you watching from? Because I need you to see what happens when a board tries to gut someone's legacy with paperwork and petty threats. I've tried to be quiet. I've tried to work through their process. But today, they crossed a line they don't even see yet. This morning, someone left a folded piece of paper on my front porch. No envelope, no stamp. Just a half-torn HOA citation and a line scrawled in Sharpie. Tell the girl to stop showing off. I didn't tell Ruby, I just smiled and helped her stretch. But I activated the system. Most folks think of cameras as deterrents. Mine don't just record, they track, flag, analyze, and learn. And they ping back. Not just to my laptop, but to a closed-loop mesh I installed 2 years ago for a city contract. Let's just say the entire HOA clubhouse had a heartbeat on my screen by noon. And that was before the bikers came. 2 men, leather vests, no plates. They circled twice before coasting to a stop near the oak swing, just when Ruby had started practicing kicks again. They didn't get off their bikes, didn't shout, just stared, predatory, long enough for Ruby to freeze. Then they drove off like they had been paid to make an impression. They were 3 minutes too early. I hadn't left for my site visit yet. I saw everything from the lab room window. And the cameras saw more. No HOA would admit to hiring scare tactics. But the timing, the escalation, the way Bradley smiled when I mentioned the swing again this afternoon, it all clicked into place. They want Ruby scared, quiet, indoors, out of view. They want the swing gone, the therapy mat rolled up, and the memory of my sister's strength erased from this block. They don't know yet that they've just triggered the wrong system. I'm not filing a complaint. I'm building a case. Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. Because every wire they've tapped, every meeting they've whispered through, and every smug notice they've printed has already started pinging back. This isn't about violations anymore. It's about exposure. And the next time they try to scare Ruby, the only thing they'll hear is playback. The first violation claimed the swing was a permanent structure without board approval. I submitted the photos, receipts, even ADA compliance forms, because Ruby's therapist had written a letter recommending kinesthetic training outdoors. Still, 2 days later, a second notice appeared. Unlicensed activity resembling instruction. That's how they described a child punching air in silence. The third citation came with a warning. Continued disregard may result in fines and legal escalation. It was signed by Bradley Keene and 2 board members I'd never met. It wasn't just Ruby they were trying to box in. Every week someone else got cited too. Evelyn Richter, 4 doors down, was written up for having wind chimes that cause sensory disruption. She has Parkinson's. Those chimes help her sleep. Another neighbor, James, the retired postal worker, got cited for non-standard mailbox dimensions. He'd had that box for 25 years. Pattern, not policy. Target, not order. I watched it unfold on camera. They always went after someone who wouldn't fight back, or someone they thought didn't know how. I started logging everything. I wasn't the only one anymore. There was an unspoken language in the neighborhood now. Heads nodding tighter at board meetings, longer silences during votes. It was like we were all waiting for the first spark. And yet, when Ruby's name came up in the most recent meeting minutes, not one person spoke up. Not even Monica Del Rey, the treasurer. She sat 3 seats from Bradley, eyes scanning a printed report like she wasn't hearing him refer to a grieving teen as a recurring liability. I saw her pause when he said it. Her fingers curled around her pen, knuckles white, but she didn't speak. I didn't judge her for it, yet. Fear makes cowards of most people. I've seen stronger men fold with less pressure than this. Still, I noted it, the silence. The way she looked at Ruby once, then looked away. That same evening, I reviewed the last month of camera logs. There was more than footage. There were patterns. HOA members driving slowly past our house, but never stopping at others on the block. A new camera placed at the community mailbox, tilted subtly toward my driveway. Motion alerts triggered at strange hours. 2:12 a.m., 4:03 a.m., always centered around the oak swing. That swing used to creak in the wind like a lullaby. Now, it sounded like a target. I ran a sweep for RF signals and found 2 unregistered transmitters broadcasting on narrowband frequencies, hidden near the sidewalk flower beds. Both were masked as irrigation sensors, but they weren't transmitting moisture data. They were motion-responsive pings, likely routed through the HOA's clubhouse server. I didn't tell Ruby. She'd already started closing the blinds tighter every evening. I just quietly logged it all, every frequency, every MAC address, every ping. That night, Ruby stood under the oak tree with her earbuds in, practicing the forms her mom taught her years ago. Her movements were slow but precise. Her foot planted, pivoted, kicked. Her breath controlled like a whisper between heartbeats. She wasn't doing it to impress anyone. She was surviving. And someone wanted that swing gone. I watched her from the front steps, arms crossed. Her form wavered once when a car rolled too slow past the curb. She didn't flinch, just glanced up, adjusted, kept moving. That was when I knew. This wasn't just about bylaws or violations or fines. This was a campaign, coordinated, calculated. And somewhere inside that clubhouse, Bradley was treating this like a game of attrition. He thought he could cite us into submission. But Ruby wasn't a problem. She was a purpose. The next morning, I drove to the HOA bulletin board near the clubhouse. I didn't tear anything down. I just added something. A small laminated card in the corner, a photo of the swing, a short caption, in memory of Alyssa Wren, mother, sister, fighter, no vandalism, no threats, just placement. By noon, it was gone, not torn, removed, clean, precise. The same way a threat feels when it comes from behind paperwork. I walked home, slower this time. Let them watch, let them wonder. They'd made a mistake when they picked a child to corner. They made a bigger one when they underestimated who was raising her. The next HOA board meeting was held under fluorescent lights that flickered just enough to unsettle. The room smelled faintly of overbrewed coffee and dry carpet glue, and the folding chairs groaned every time. Someone shifted their weight. I sat near the back, arms crossed, not speaking, just watching. Bradley Keene was already in full performance mode, reading from a clipboard like he was announcing a property auction. Ongoing violations continue to hinder community standards, he said, eyes grazing past the room like it bored him. We've had reports of minors engaging in physical activity that may violate safety ordinances and create a perception of liability. No one looked at me. No one had to. Monica Del Rey sat 3 seats from Bradley, same as always. Her blouse was perfectly pressed, her heels silent against the tile. But her right hand wouldn't stop tapping the edge of her clipboard. A soft, rhythmic tick. Tap, tap, pause, tap. Not random. Like her body was rehearsing a truth it hadn't yet said out loud. Bradley turned the page with a dramatic sigh. And we have photographic evidence of unauthorized modifications, namely, a wooden swing suspended from a tree planted dangerously close to property lines. That's when Monica finally spoke. Not much, just 3 words. It's on record. Her voice was even, but her posture was wrong. She didn't lean forward. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. It was the voice of someone participating by force, not conviction. And it landed soft, barely registered against Bradley's ongoing monologue. He didn't thank her, didn't acknowledge the addition. He just kept speaking, and she kept shrinking in her seat, inch by inch. I watched her the rest of the meeting. She never looked at Bradley, never looked at me either. But when Ruby's name came up again, she flinched, just slightly, like a muscle misfiring. And when one of the board members joked about, "Next time we'll just install mats for everyone," Monica's mouth moved, but no sound came out. By the time the meeting ended, the room had thinned. People avoided eye contact, as usual. Some muttered polite goodnights. Others disappeared through the side exit. But Monica stayed seated, gathering her papers slower than necessary, like she didn't want to walk out with Bradley. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. I'd already installed a passive RFID reader in the base of my watch. As I walked by the board table on my way out, the chip in Monica's HOA-issued ID badge pinged, time-stamped, logged. Now I knew exactly when she arrived, when she left, and if she went near the clubhouse server. She had. 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Once at midnight. At home, I pulled up the server logs I'd mirrored from a backdoor node I'd planted the year I moved in. Most people don't think of an HOA as a network structure. They think of it as a petty council. But the cameras, the entry gates, the Wi-Fi guest logs, those are all nodes. I cross-checked badge data against access logs. Monica had accessed the financial dashboard once and the external security contractor folder twice. No downloads, just views. That meant she was looking, but hadn't acted. Yet. 2 nights later, I spotted her again, this time outside the community pool. It was closed, lights off, but she sat on the edge of the chaise lounges, illuminated only by the blue glow of her phone. She didn't see me, but I saw everything. The screen showed a thread of emails, headers only, but enough to read the subjects, all HOA. One from Bradley, one marked forwarded attachment. One titled non-public asset use, discretion advised. She stared at that one for a long time. Then she lowered the phone, dropped it in her purse, and just sat there, her hands folded in her lap, eyes locked on the rippleless surface of the pool like she was trying to see something that wasn't there anymore. The conflicted ones always looked the same, not afraid, not angry, just worn out from carrying a truth too long. And that's the moment I knew. Monica had something to lose, but more importantly, she had something to tell. She just didn't know it yet. The warning letter came folded once, hand-delivered without a signature, no envelope. Just taped to our door in the early hours, still slick with dew. Ruby found it before I did. She handed it to me without a word. Her face gave nothing away, but her grip on the paper was tight enough to leave a crease. I unfolded it slowly, already knowing what I'd find. Final notice. Non-compliance escalation. Pending failure to remove unauthorized structure and cease physical training activity will result in daily fines, legal referral, and HOA enforcement intervention. No signature, no official seal, just a typed page and a veiled threat. This was a message, not a formality. Ruby didn't ask questions. She just walked to the kitchen, grabbed her water bottle, and went to stretch by the swing. The mat was still damp from last night's rain, but she unrolled it anyway. I watched her plant her feet and start slow, controlled movements, breath matched to form, focused, centered. But I could see it in the way her shoulders held tension. She knew now, not just that someone wanted to stop her, but that they wouldn't stop until they broke something she loved. By noon, 3 more homes on the block had new notices taped to their mailboxes. I saw Evelyn Richter staring at hers, lips pursed, hands trembling around her walker. A young couple across the street, Ben and Alicia, got one too for non-standard exterior lighting. Their only crime was installing soft yellow bulbs to help their newborn sleep. This wasn't policy anymore. It was pressure. Bradley was escalating, fast and wide. He wanted us overwhelmed, disoriented, confused into compliance. But I didn't work that way. Pressure sharpened some people, and I'd been under heavier fire than a neighborhood enforcer with a printer. I pulled up the community's shared directory, an unsecured HOA calendar hosted on their default server. It listed every upcoming citation hearing, community fine collection date, and internal review session. I wasn't supposed to have access, but Bradley hadn't changed the default credentials from when the management firm first installed the system. It was all right there. A new entry had been quietly added to the board's internal calendar. Private session. Subject, Wren property, 11:30 a.m. Saturday. They weren't just issuing fines, they were holding a closed-door vote about us. Ruby, the swing, me. That same afternoon, I walked the neighborhood deliberately, collecting passive pings from every HOA camera on the block. I'd program my phone to auto-log unique device IDs and match them against installation permits filed with the county. There were at least 4 new cameras, unpermitted, unmarked, and all pointed within 10 degrees of our front lawn. I wasn't surprised. What had surprised me was the contractor listed on the embedded metadata, Denton Secure Logistics. I knew that name. A small-time security firm with ties to off-book surveillance work. One of the board members must have approved them without public vote, which meant HOA funds were being spent, quietly, probably illegally, on private surveillance. And if they'd done it to me, they'd done it to others. I pulled up archived traffic footage from a camera I'd helped install 2 years ago under a municipal grant, a corner unit still pinging from a traffic light at the south exit of the neighborhood. I cross-referenced timestamps from Ruby's training hours with license plate scans. The same black SUV had parked within 3 houses of ours 5 times in the last month. No HOA sticker, no visible tags, no deliveries, just sitting, watching. That night, I set my drone system to active mode. Normally, I kept it passive, logging, scanning, never engaging. But now, I needed a full map, not just visuals. I needed thermal signatures, RF traces, time-stamped overlays. By dawn, I had a full color-coded map of the block. There were blind spots, intentional ones, areas where coverage should have existed, but didn't. They aligned perfectly with Bradley's home, Monica's garage, and the corner mailbox cluster. Omissions tell their own story, and someone was planning a move before Saturday's session. I wasn't going to stop it, not yet. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't interference, it's observation, documented, surgical, quiet, and when the time comes, silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. Friday evening brought a dry breeze and a sky smeared with red. Ruby was already outside, barefoot on the mat, moving through her forms under the swing. I watched her from the side window, the oak silhouette cutting into the sky behind her like a monument no one could erase. I hadn't told her what Saturday's private board session meant. Not yet. But I had work to do before then. I waited until dusk settled and neighborhood foot traffic thinned. Then I grabbed my kit and crossed 2, lots east to the far corner utility post, one of the newer camera mounts that had shown irregular pings during the last scan. At first glance, it looked standard, plastic housing, HOA seal sticker, fixed angle lens, but the plate screws didn't match. I slid a flexible scope into the base and angled upward. Inside, behind the camera lens, was a micro router, not part of the original design. It was patched into the power line, broadcasting over a short-range network using rotating encryption. Not high-grade, but enough to evade lazy inspections. Someone had modified these cameras to offload footage to an external node, unregistered and entirely private. I pulled the signal trace and let my custom scanner do its work. The signal resolved to a remote device with a matching signature, parked across the street, inside the black SUV I'd logged twice last week. And that's when I saw him. Tall, mid-40s, shaved head, tan tactical boots. Not HOA, not local, not even subtle. He leaned against the SUV, hands in his pockets, eyes on the swing. Not Ruby, just the swing. I ducked back behind the shrubs and lowered my thermal scope. The man wasn't moving, just monitoring. I captured a full resolution image and flipped the feed to my laptop at home, where a facial recognition protocol spun into motion. The match came back before I even got to the sidewalk. Name: Vernon Slate. Affiliation: Denton Secure Logistics. Former private military contractor, Redgate Division, not licensed for civilian surveillance in Virginia. That was the missing piece. Bradley hadn't just hired a contractor. He'd hired an enforcer. I retreated, looped around the block, and returned home through the alleyway. Ruby had finished training and was rinsing her hands at the outdoor faucet, the soft splash of water, the only sound in the quiet. She didn't ask why I looked so serious. She didn't need to. Inside, I began mapping out the connection tree. Vernon Slate, Denton Secure Logistics, HOA Discretionary Funds, Monica Del Rey's Treasury Access. It fit. But there was still no proof Monica knew. Viewing a file doesn't mean endorsing it. I needed confirmation. So I pulled the conversation log from a directional mic I'd planted last week near the HOA clubhouse exterior, set to trigger when known board member voices activated within 10 feet. Most of it was useless: logistical updates, complaint chatter, budget notes. But one recording, time-stamped 3 days ago, was different. Bradley's voice, clipped and smug. "Don't worry about the optics. Denton doesn't wear badges, and she's just a kid. This'll spook her off the mat in a week." Then Monica's voice, low, tight. "You're escalating. This isn't what we agreed to." Then silence. A full 5 seconds of it. Then her again. "She's 14, Brad. And her mom's been dead less than a year." Another pause. Bradley, dismissive. "Then he shouldn't have moved here. You want to keep your role. You let me handle it." The audio was clear, legally obtained, time-stamped, location verified. Monica had tried to push back, briefly, but she hadn't stopped it. She hadn't warned me, and that made her complicit, even if only by silence. Still, it told me something important. She knew it had gone too far, which meant she was close, very close, to cracking. I saved the file and sent a decoy copy to an encrypted drive linked to a cloud account in a name that didn't exist. Then I printed a single still frame, Vernon Slate standing under the street lamp, staring at Ruby's swing like it was a tactical target. I slid it into an unmarked envelope and left it in Monica's HOA inbox, right on top of her board documents. No note, no message, just a photo, and a silent offer. Tell the truth. Before the truth finds you. Saturday came quiet. No cars rolled past our house before dawn. No papers on the porch. No idle walkers or joggers pretending not to glance at the swing. The air had that stillness, like just before a storm rolls in from the mountains. Even the birds seemed unsure if they should sing. Ruby didn't train that morning. She sat on the edge of the porch with her water bottle, staring at the oak swing like she was trying to memorize it. I didn't ask if she'd seen the notice again. I didn't mention the man from the SUV, but I knew something in her had changed. That kind of stillness in a kid doesn't happen without cause. At 11:28 a.m., I watched from across the street as Bradley pulled into the clubhouse parking lot with his usual flourish, parking crooked, talking loudly on a Bluetooth headset that probably wasn't connected to anything. 2 more board members followed, Don Holloway and Petra Vargas. Then, 5 minutes later, Monica arrived. She hesitated at her car door, looked around once, then clutched a folder to her chest and walked in without looking up. I didn't follow her inside. I didn't need to. I had installed a passive sensor beneath the conference table during a previous HOA meeting, the kind that doesn't transmit, just records. A short-range storage unit set to capture audio when motion activates within a 10-foot radius. It was collecting every syllable as they spoke. I waited exactly 42 minutes. That's how long the private session lasted. Then they started exiting. First Petra, unreadable behind her sunglasses. Then Don, moving too quickly, like he didn't want to be seen. Monica walked out last. She didn't get in her car immediately. She stood by the driver's side door, just holding her keys, eyes glazed over like she'd left something important inside, but didn't have the strength to go back for it. Bradley came out alone after her, walking slow, head down, typing into his phone with a kind of confidence only people like him carry. The decision had been made. The letter was waiting in my mailbox when I returned. HOA, Formal Notice of Enforcement. Effective. Immediately, your property is in violation of HOA Code 11A regarding unauthorized structures. Fines will begin at $250 per day. Further non-compliance will trigger legal referral and external enforcement per board vote. No hearing, no mediation, no warning, just escalation. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the phrasing. External enforcement. That wasn't standard HOA language. That was Denton Secure Logistics language, corporate sanitized threat jargon. And Monica had let it pass. I sat down at my workstation and pulled the full audio file from the undertable sensor. The recording was clear. Monica's voice came through softer than the others, but you could still hear the break in her breath when Bradley made his declaration. He said it like it was a victory. We've reached the point where forceful deterrence is necessary. The board is aligned. Then Monica, we should wait. There are other... No, Bradley snapped. You had your chance to object. Now you vote or you resign. She didn't respond. What followed was silence. And silence, when recorded, has weight. You could feel it. When the vote tally came, Monica's voice was absent. But she hadn't left the room. She'd been counted. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't about bylaws anymore. This was about leverage. Bradley had something on Monica. Or she believed he did. Enough to make her choose silence over action. Enough to make her sit through the vote and leave shaking. I didn't blame her. Fear is a slow poison. It makes good people wait too long to act, hoping someone else will make the hard call. But that wasn't my way. I didn't file a counterclaim. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't even mention the notice to Ruby. I went outside and checked the bolts on the swing. Then I took down the old weatherproof drone mount from the oak branch. And I replaced it with something newer, something smarter, something that could record, analyze, and stream in real time. If they were going to force this into the open, I would let them. And when the moment came, they'd be the ones exposed. Because you don't erase legacy with paper, you erase it with fear. And I stopped being afraid a long time ago. Monica was waiting by the community pool, not sitting, not pacing, just standing, one hand on the cold metal fence, staring into still water like it might answer for her. Her shoes were wrong for the concrete. Her blouse was wrinkled. She looked like someone who'd been awake too long, thinking too hard about the wrong thing. I didn't announce myself, just walked up and stood beside her, watching the water ripple faintly from the breeze. You know what's happening, I said. She didn't flinch, didn't even turn her head. He told us it was preventative, that you were a threat to neighborhood peace. Ruby's a grieving 14-year-old, I said, quiet, practicing martial arts under a swing built from her dead. Mother's furniture. Does that feel threatening to you? Her grip on the fence tightened. I didn't vote, she murmured. I didn't say yes. But you didn't walk out. She finally turned to me, eyes dark under fatigue. He said if I resigned, I'd be liable for misuse of funds. That if the Denton invoices got out, I'd go down with him. He wasn't bluffing. He's got copies of every discretionary transfer I've made in the last 6 months. He's using you as insulation, I said. You're the firewall between him and a criminal audit? Monica looked away, her jaw clenched. He said it wouldn't get physical, just scare tactics, just presence. You saw the picture I left, I said. She nodded. That man doesn't do presence. He does enforcement. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she reached into her purse and handed me a small white drive, unmarked, plain. I shouldn't have this. It's a system copy I pulled after the vote. Financials, security upgrades, emails from Bradley's account. I knew it would be deleted by Monday. Why give it to me? Because I saw her, she said, voice breaking. Ruby, that night you installed the swing, she stood under it with her hand on the wood, eyes closed. She wasn't just training. She was remembering. The words landed heavier than I expected. I have a daughter, Monica whispered. She's grown now, lives upstate. But if someone had tried to take her anchor away after I died, and nobody stopped them, she trailed off. I took the drive, slipping it into my pocket without ceremony. I'll protect your name when I use it, I said. She shook her head. Number don't, I've been silent long enough. Let people know I helped. Just let them know why. I nodded. Monica turned back toward the pool. Bradley's planning something bigger. He doesn't care about votes anymore. He's trying to provoke you. Wants you to lash out so he can file restraining orders and get court enforcement. He's escalating before he's exposed. I smiled grimly. Then it's a race. She exhaled slowly. I hope you win. As I walked away, the wind shifted behind me. I didn't look back. Monica wouldn't follow, and she wouldn't ask for protection. She'd already risked everything handing me that drive. Back home, I plugged it into a quarantine system and isolated the contents. She hadn't exaggerated. The folder marked SecOps-DS log contained billing records for unauthorized camera systems, invoices for tactical deterrence deployment, and one chilling itemized receipt. Client directive, minor intimidation via proximity patrol. Ruby. They were billing the HOA for what they'd done to Ruby. And in the folder marked Private Keen, there were emails, dozens of them. Bradley had been coordinating with the Denton rep for months, justifying actions with phrases like civil, cohesion risk, and non-compliant youth visibility. But the worst one? A draft, never sent. Once he breaks protocol, we'll move to petition for forced removal. Frame it like a safety measure. He's got a dead sister and no spouse. No one will question a mental health angle. He didn't even try to hide the malice. He counted on silence, and until now, he'd had it. I encrypted the files, tagged each with a unique hash, and uploaded them to a secure Dropbox tied to 3 local journalists, none of whom I'd ever spoken to, but each one with a track record of exposing community corruption. Then I printed out one single image, Ruby mid-kick under the swing, arms steady, hair pulled back, face calm. I taped it on my wall, a reminder. This isn't about retribution. It's about reclamation. The plan had to be quiet. Loud moves would play into Bradley's hands. That's what he wanted. Emotional outbursts, reactive threats, anything he could label as hostile. But I wasn't playing his game. I was building my own. By midnight, I'd built a shadow site. Private, encrypted, locally hosted. No names, no commentary, just files, images, invoices, audio clips. A digital archive of every decision, every abuse, every breadcrumb Bradley and his allies had left behind. The content wasn't flashy, it was surgical. I called it cedartracewatch.com. The homepage was a simple message in white text against black. When they come for one of us, they come for all of us. These are their actions. You decide the response. Every image was time-stamped, every audio clip labeled, every document scrubbed for metadata, but indexed for public indexing when the time came. The goal wasn't to post it yet. The goal was to prepare for when I would. By dawn, I'd set it to auto-publish if I missed 3 scheduled authentication windows in a row, fail-safes in case Bradley got bold or Denton got sloppy. The moment they tried anything beyond intimidation, the entire neighborhood would wake up to proof. But I didn't stop there. I knew exposure alone wouldn't hold weight unless the story mattered to people beyond code violations and security invoices. So, I wrote Ruby's story. No names, no faces. Just a single narrative post titled The Swing. It told the story of a girl who lost her mother. A girl who trained under a handmade swing built from her mother's table. A girl who found strength in form and movement, only to be harassed by faceless authority figures who wanted her gone. Not because of what she did, but because of what she represented. I ended it with one line. When the swing disappears, so does the memory. I won't let that happen. The post was scheduled, timed to go live 2 hours after the file drop, when public sympathy would matter most. Next came the press list. 3 reporters, 1 legal blog, 1 investigative podcast. I created burner emails, each with a ZIP file and a link to the site. They wouldn't know me, but they'd recognize the pieces. Security firms misusing contracts, HOA funds misallocated, minors targeted for psychological deterrence. I didn't need their help to win. I just needed them to amplify what was already true. At 8:42 a.m., I saw Bradley step outside his house in a polo shirt 2 sizes too tight, holding a coffee like it was a badge. He walked his perimeter like a man checking for leaks. The smile was still on his face, but the tension was in his shoulders. He knew something was shifting. He could feel the ground thinning. What he didn't know was that the swing wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a broadcast tower. The new mount I'd installed on the oak was a directional mic with active noise cancellation and wind filtering. Every conversation within a 20-foot radius was captured and uploaded to a rolling buffer on the local server. As of last night, it was synced with a red flag trigger. If anyone used the phrase enforcement, incident, or removal within range, the site would auto-publish everything. I'd programmed the swing to become the final tripwire. Because I knew Bradley, he wasn't subtle. Eventually, he'd let the mask slip, out of pride, or fear, or ego. And when he did, the swing would hear him, and the whole neighborhood would too. Ruby didn't know any of this. She just trained. She came outside that morning, rolled out her mat, and started moving through her forms like nothing had changed. Maybe she didn't need to know. Maybe it was better that way. Her stillness was her own kind of weapon, and I wouldn't let anyone strip that from her. I checked my server logs once more. 3 separate out-of-state IPs had pinged the shadow site that morning, test connections from public newsrooms I recognized. They were watching, waiting. All I needed now was for Bradley to speak. And when he did, the swing would make sure his voice carried. By Sunday morning, I had eyes everywhere. The drone net was live. 3 rotating units triangulated above the swing, their routes randomized, and their feeds encrypted. The cameras weren't flashy. Low profile, thermal capable, armed with vibration sensors and RF sniffers. Enough to track presence, intent, and pattern without alerting anyone. I wasn't setting a trap. I was laying out a mirror and letting them step into it. I spent the day monitoring HOA communication traffic, not official memos. Those were sanitized. But the encrypted radios the security firm used for private enforcement coverage, sloppy. Their frequency hopping was predictable. Every 6th channel followed a pattern I'd seen in their Denton division contracts from 3 years ago. With a little math and some SDR gear, I cracked their current rotation. By noon, I was reading the chatter live. West Post, visual on Swing Girl, just watching, no contact. Copy, passive presence only, no engagement. Understood. We'll maintain perimeter visual for 30. It chilled me. How casual they were, like they were discussing weather or lawn care. Ruby wasn't a child to them. She was a behavioral variable, something to be monitored, recorded, and filed into an enforcement packet. But I wasn't going to interfere yet. They were already doing the work for me. The more they followed her, the more they logged footage. And every time they passed within audio range of the oak swing, my mics captured it. I started building a subfolder, DSL proximity logs. Dozens of files now, patterns forming. Still, it wasn't enough. Bradley hadn't cracked yet. He was still insulated by layers of smug confidence and bureaucratic layers. But his timing was getting sloppy. He'd gone quiet for too long, which meant pressure was mounting behind the scenes. So I decided to test him. I printed out a single frame from the Denton invoices Monica had given me. The line item that read, Phase 2, Scheduled Psychological Deterrent. I circled the phrase in red ink and taped it to the inside of the HOA bulletin board's glass, behind 3 sheets of official notices. Nothing dramatic, just there, waiting. Bradley noticed. By late afternoon, his SUV screeched to a stop in front of the board. He was alone. No blazer this time. Just a gray t-shirt damp under the arms and a walk that screamed agitation. He fumbled with the keys to the display case, yanked the door open, and ripped down the paper like it had personally insulted him. The moment was perfect. The drone above him captured the angle. The mic in the swing caught the breathless muttering that followed. He wants a war, he'll get one. Freak's pushing it. Should have had Slate handle it already. Slate. The name hung in the air like a dropped match. The keyword synced. The site didn't publish yet, but the clock had started ticking. 2 more trigger phrases, and it would go live. Back inside, I rerouted the signal to my terminal. The shadow site would activate if another confirmation of removal or containment passed through the swing's range. At this point, I didn't need to bait Bradley. I just needed to give him space to self-destruct. So I did something that made his blood boil every time. I let Ruby train. That evening, I sat on the porch while she moved through her forms, slow and fluid, the mat dry under her bare feet, the sky glowing orange behind her. The oak swing swayed gently behind her, creaking in rhythm. She didn't ask why I stayed close. She didn't need to. She knew the world around her had shifted, and still, she moved. At 7:46 p.m., the black SUV returned. Same man, same posture, same silent watch. Only this time, Ruby didn't pause. She finished her routine, bowed toward the tree, then turned and walked past him like he didn't exist. No fear, no flinch. Just a girl reclaiming space that had been taken from her. And the man? He watched her go, then reached for his phone and said the word I'd been waiting for. Containment failed. The signal synced. The swing captured it. The drone verified it. And the site began its upload. The truth was no longer just stored. It was now in motion. By 8:03 p.m., the archive went live. CedarTraceWatch.com unlocked across 5 mirrored servers, timed to a staggered release. 15-minute delays between each server sync, a failsafe in case any link was taken down. I hadn't shared it with the neighborhood yet, not directly, but the reporters had their access. The zip files I'd sent earlier were unzipping in inboxes across the state. And then the texts started, first from Ben, 2 houses down. Did you post this? Then Evelyn, that swing, that's Ruby. Then from a number I didn't recognize. Saw the site. Please don't take it down. People need to know. The site was bare bones by design. No headlines, no commentary. Just raw evidence, Denton's presence, the invoices Monica pulled, Bradley's audio clips, and most importantly, the footage, the swing, the girl, the men, the threats, the silence. By 9 p.m., 3 of the reporters had replied. One had already called Denton's PR contact. Another had posted a redacted clip to her Twitter with the caption, "Private security firm caught enforcing HOA pressure on grieving teen, developing story." Views climbed fast, and the last one, he just sent one line back. "Tell her she's brave." I didn't wake Ruby. She was already asleep, swinging slowly in the porch hammock, still in her training clothes, earbuds half tucked into her collar, her breath steady, her hands relaxed for the first time in weeks. I let her rest. She didn't need to see the news break. The next morning, Bradley's SUV was gone. Monica texted at 6:14 a.m. "He's at the clubhouse. They're scrambling. Legal rep showed up." I didn't reply. I was already one step ahead. The swing mic caught another meeting, an unlisted emergency session. Bradley's voice again, this time sharper, desperate. "The site's down by tonight or we all get sued. Delray, you gave him that drive, didn't you?" "I know it was you." Monica didn't answer, but another board member did, Don. "You said this was covered, that this wouldn't blow back, that this was legal." More silence, then Petra. "My name is on those votes, Brad." And Bradley's voice cracked then, just a little. "He manipulated this. He baited us." It almost made me laugh. They'd built their own collapse. I just held up the mirror. At 7:32 a.m., a news van parked at the entrance gate, then another. By 8 o'clock, a small crowd had gathered near the community pool, neighbors who hadn't attended a board meeting in years. I stayed inside, watching from the lab. I didn't need to be the face of this. Ruby was still sleeping when the first reporter knocked on our door. I stepped outside, calm, neutral, no sign of tension. "Are you Eli Wren?" "Yes." "We've reviewed the evidence. The footage is compelling. Would you like to make a statement?" I glanced toward the swing, then back at her. No statement, just truth. And I closed the door. The story broke across 3 networks by noon. Local outlets picked it up, then regional, then national aggregators. The angle was clear. Private HOA deploys psychological tactics against grieving teen. Under the spotlight, Bradley didn't stand a chance. By 3 p.m., his resignation letter was circulating, leaked from inside the board itself. It blamed community misunderstandings, unauthorized subcontractor behavior, and a deeply regrettable breakdown in oversight. No apology, no ownership, just escape. But it didn't work. Denton Secure Logistics issued their own statement an hour later, severing ties with Bradley, confirming misuse of services, and opening internal investigation files. And Monica, she went public too. Not with drama, not with blame. Just a quiet interview where she told the truth. I watched a child hold on to the only thing she had left of her mother, she said, and I didn't protect that, so I'm speaking now. The board was dissolved by evening. An emergency vote scheduled for replacement members. An independent audit launched into HOA discretionary spending. And the swing, still standing, still creaking gently in the breeze, still there. Because now, everyone knew what it meant. The room was full by the time I walked in. Folding chairs scraped against the tiled floor as neighbors shifted, murmured, glanced at one another. No one made eye contact with the front row, not where Bradley used to sit, where the nameplate still read, President, Bradley Keene in stiff black font. It hadn't been removed yet, but no one sat behind it. At the podium stood Evelyn Richter, her voice clear despite the tremor in her hands. Tonight's meeting will begin with public comment. If you wish to speak, please sign in at the side table. She didn't look at me, but she nodded once. It was all I needed. I didn't step forward. I hadn't planned to. But others did. Ben spoke first, his voice quiet but steady. We just had our first baby. When the HOA cited us for non-standard lighting, I didn't think much of it. But now I know it wasn't about the bulbs. Then Alicia. I walked past that swing every day. I never saw a hazard. I saw healing. And then came James, the retired postal worker who'd been fined for his old metal mailbox. He took longer to stand. But when he did, the room fell quiet. I fought in a war, he said. Came back home expecting order, fairness, not this. We trusted the board to manage rules, not weaponize them. Each voice was a stone laid at Bradley's feet, even though he wasn't there to hear it. Then finally Monica stood. She walked slowly to the podium. Her face was pale, but her chin lifted, no notes in her hand. Just resolve. My name is Monica Del Rey. I served as treasurer on the HOA board for 6 years. I approved budgets. I processed payments. And for the last 8 months, I allowed funds to go to a security contractor who had no business near a residential community. The room was silent. I knew it was wrong, she continued. I was told it was legal. I believed if I kept quiet, it would fade, but it didn't. It escalated, and I watched a child, who had already lost her mother, become the target of intimidation. She paused. I didn't speak then, but I am now, and I resign, effective immediately. A soft rustle passed through the room. No applause, just breath, shared recognition of a burden finally released. Then she looked toward me. Not for long, just long enough. Anne walked away from the podium, not to the board's table, but to the back of the room, where she sat beside Evelyn. The meeting continued. Votes were cast for interim leadership. Neighbors who had never spoken up nominated themselves. Ben, Alicia, a quiet librarian named Marie from the south end of the neighborhood. No one opposed them. No one dared. It was already done. When the microphone was offered to me, I shook my head. I'd already said everything I needed to say, through footage, files, and silence. The real story had played out in backyards and inboxes, behind bulletin boards and beneath swing sets. This wasn't a victory that needed narration. It needed witnesses. And tonight, we had them. As the meeting closed, Evelyn tapped the gavel once. Motion carried. New appointments will begin review of past financial decisions, security contracts, and vote history. Public records will be posted online within 7 business days. It was the first time she'd said public records in a meeting. The weight of it settled into the room like new air. As people filed out, a few stopped to shake my hand. Others just nodded. No one said my name. They didn't need to. They knew. Outside, the night was quiet. I walked back home under the same streetlights that had once felt like spotlights. But tonight, they didn't feel threatening, just present. At the corner, I paused. The oak swing moved gently in the breeze, casting a slow shadow across the lawn. Ruby stood beneath it, barefoot again, her hoodie sleeves bunched at the elbows. She wasn't practicing, just standing. When she looked at me, I nodded once. "It's over," I said. She didn't ask how, didn't ask what came next. She turned, put her hand on the swing, and pushed it once, just enough for it to sway. And in that moment, I knew. The sound it made wouldn't haunt us anymore. It would remind us. We had kept the promise. The swing creaked in rhythm with the breeze. No cameras tracked Ruby now. No black SUVs circled the block. No threats hidden in clipped phrases or folded notices. Just a girl beneath an oak tree, palms open, head tilted to the sky, breathing in something we hadn't tasted in months. Peace. I stood a few paces behind her. One hand resting on the porch rail, the other wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. The yard looked the same, but everything had changed. The HOA board was gone. The security contracts had been suspended. The community bylaws were under independent legal review. And Bradley, no one had seen him since the story went national. According to a neighbor's whisper, he'd moved into a short-term rental 3 towns over. Taking time to reflect was how one article phrased it. I didn't care where he went. I didn't need his name dragged further through the mud. I just needed the silence that came with his absence. Ruby turned and sat gently on the swing, legs curled beneath her. Her fingertips ran along the wood, tracing invisible lines carved by time and memory. "You know they want to name it?" she said, without looking at me. "Name what?" She smiled faintly. "The swing." For Mom, I didn't answer right away. My throat tightened. That kind of thing, it sounded like closure, but it also sounded like goodbye. And we hadn't said that. Not really. "I think she'd like that," I said finally. Ruby nodded once, satisfied. A few days earlier, Monica had dropped off an envelope at our door. No message, no small talk. Just a handwritten note inside. Every number, every signature, every vote, for the record. Keep it safe. It included every board action that had passed in silence under Bradley's term. Fines issued, waivers ignored, complaints denied. It wasn't for the media. It wasn't even for the new board. It was for us. Proof that we hadn't imagined it. That what we'd survived wasn't paranoia or grief misdirected. It was real, and now it was done. I'd taken the files, sealed them in a fireproof box, and slid them beneath the floorboards in my lab. Not out of fear, but because sometimes you keep a record not to use it, but to remember how far you've come. The neighborhood was different now. Evelyn and Alicia had organized open forums in the community center twice a month. Children played in the streets again. The wind chimes on Evelyn's porch, once fined for excessive auditory disruption, now sang freely without worry. No more anonymous citations, no more unmarked cars, just cedar trees, laughter, and time. Ruby stood, stretching her arms overhead, spine arching into the shape of a crescent moon. "Do you think people will forget?" she asked. "Some will," I said. "Others never will." "But they'll stop being afraid?" I smiled. "They already have." She walked toward me, quiet on her bare feet, and handed me something small. A folded piece of paper, no handwriting, no ink, just a crease down the middle. "You kept it?" I asked. She nodded. It was the first thing that told us the truth. It was the note from months ago, the one someone had left on our porch, the message that started it all. Tell the girl to stop showing off. I looked at it for a moment, then tucked it into my back pocket. "I'll burn it," I said. "Eventually?" "Not yet," Ruby replied. "Let it remember." The sun was beginning to fall behind the trees now. Golden streaks spilled across the lawn, wrapping the swing in light. The wind picked up just enough to make the chains rattle softly. The sound didn't startle me anymore. It sounded like freedom. Before we headed inside, I turned once more to look at the swing. A symbol, they'd called it. A violation. A risk. But all it had ever been was a promise. And that promise had been kept. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now. Share your story in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. You're not alone, and if they push, you can push back.